Welcome to this video then on planning for the non-fiction writing question on your GCSE English Language exam paper. The purpose of this video, just like with the video for paper 1, is to do three things. Number one, look at the importance of planning the response before we dive in and start writing it. Secondly, the importance of the editing process at the end to make sure that what we've written is fit for purpose. And thirdly, some strategies, can't speak, to help you plan an effective piece of writing to aim to hit the marks for structure and cohesion on the mark scheme. So why is planning your response to the question before you start writing it so important? Well, just like with paper 1, the examiners really criticised student responses. They said that many students would have benefited from a quality, not quantity approach. It's not about writing 10 pages, it's about writing 2 to 3 sides that really have an impact, that are structured well and are cohesive. They said in some cases students were desperate to pepper their responses with statistics and other techniques that really did nothing for the piece of work and actually stifled their creativity. Putting acronyms, for example, at the start of the paper like a forest or persuader, all that does is force you into using techniques that don't necessarily do anything to the piece of writing. We need to move away from those things and really structure what we're writing. So having that confidence at the start, even though it can be really easy to just want to get started because we're stressed and panicked and nervous and anxious and all those things, taking some time to plan, trust me, will have a massive impact on the piece of writing that you produce. So again, just like with paper 1, 10 minutes planning, 25 minutes on the writing, and then 10 minutes at the end to proofread and check to make sure that what we've written is fit for purpose and we can send it to the examiner safe in the knowledge that the mistakes and errors are absolutely limited, hopefully not there at all. The question then will look something like this, and you'll notice that I've annotated this question, which is what you should do too, picking out some key points and minding the gap, the genre, the audience and the purpose. In this case, the weather in the UK is terrible. It's no wonder people living in Britain today are unhappy and angry all the time. Write an article for a broadsheet newspaper in which you argue for or against this statement. You'll notice that I've underlined unhappy and angry all the time because that's the part of the question that I need to argue for or against. Do I believe that the weather in this country makes people unhappy and angry? We need to write an article. That's really important. Broadsheet newspaper is important as well. The difference between broadsheet and tabloid. Broadsheet is an example of a broadsheet would be the Times or the Independent. They're normally the huge newspapers where there's loads of words, limited colour and picture. Normally the audience is much more educated. Whereas a tabloid is less so, in which you argue. I've underlined, I've got to argue my point of view, whether I believe this or not. What I would do now is pause. I've put some sample questions on my website, mrcrawfordenglish.com/revision. You can find the link to that underneath the video. Head there now, download the sample questions and have a go at editing and annotating and making notes and identifying the gap on those questions. And then when we come back, we'll turn those notes into a structured response. So now that we've done the planning, all we need to do now is turn that plan into a structured response. The strategy we're going to use for this is a sentence stem approach. I've got 8 sentence stems for you, which could be the first sentences of 8 different paragraphs. That means you're going to get a really clear structure. They're not exciting, they're not whizzy or amazing, they are simply basic sentence stems that if you're after a grade 5, will help you to structure a response that will help you to achieve that many marks. You could up-level these and make these much more exciting, and you can even do that in your 10 minutes that you've got spare at the end of the exam to do your proofreading. Here are the 8 then. The first one, I think that, and we're going to finish that sentence off. I think that the weather in this country does make people angry and unhappy all of the time. It's a really good opportunity here to get into some hyperbole, some over-exaggeration, and maybe use some imperative verbs as well, like must. The second paragraph, I feel this way because, this is a really good opportunity to get an anecdote in, a little story. I feel this way because, and then recount a story from your past that can obviously be made up for this. No one's going to Google it and check. No one's going to find out who you are and find out whether you really did go to Spain 2 summers ago. A little story about how the weather affects people's mood in our country. You might recall a summer holiday, for example, where it rained continuously from the moment you broke up to the moment you went back to school, and it was the worst summer holiday ever. Make up some sort of anecdote that really positions you for the reader to have some sort of knowledge and understanding about this topic. The third paragraph, there are other good reasons and spell out 2 or 3 key concerns here. A really good technique to try and get into this little paragraph. There might be some listing, for example. The next paragraph, it's not just me. This is your opportunity to quote an expert, which again can be made up. In this case, it might be a weather person, someone who presents the weather on the TV, or someone from the Met Office, or somebody like that that also agrees. Someone with some sort of responsibility and status in the world that you're talking about. Next paragraph, it's the truth. A really good chance here to get in some statistics or facts to really back up your argument. What evidence do you have? What percentage of people agreed with this statement in a survey, for example? It could affect you too, is the next paragraph. You're right, Arch? Good. It could affect you too is the next one. Why might this topic of bad weather making you angry and unhappy, why might that affect the people that are reading your article? A good chance to get a rhetorical question in, maybe even consider a counter argument. Why might some people disagree with you? And then obviously if you're going to do that, what's really important is that you belittle their point of view. You might say something along the lines of, whilst I understand that some people don't believe that the weather makes them unhappy, those people are wrong because. The next paragraph, we need to. This is your paragraph where you're going to really get people on board with your argument. We need to what? A great opportunity here to get a triplet in. And the final paragraph, we're going to aim for a 1-sentence paragraph, and it begins, I believe. What should happen next? What should people do in order to combat their unhappiness and anger at the British weather, for example? What I would do now is pause and use the planning sheet that I've provided. You can get that on the website, mrcrawfordenglish.com/revision. Follow the link below the video and have a go at planning your response by completing those sentence starters and thinking about getting your anecdote in, your triplet, your rhetorical question, your listing. What might that look like? That's going to make the writing really, really straightforward, because then when you've done that plan, all you've got to do is turn those sentence stems into your short paragraphs, remembering that we're only aiming for 2 or 3 sides. Our hand does not need to kill us by the end of this exam. We can create something really structured with very little in the terms of the amount that we have to write. Give it a go, and when we come back, we'll look at how we might edit that response. So now that your planning is complete, you should now be able to spend your 25 minutes writing and really turning that plan into some effective paragraphs. Once you've done that 25 minutes, and obviously you need to keep writing during that section, don't stop and edit along the way. We're going to save that 10 minutes at the end of the exam because that last 10 minutes isn't your nap time. It's not time for a snooze. It's time to edit and make good and make sure what you've written is what you want the examiner to see. So in that 10 minutes, after that 25 minutes writing is complete, we're going to spend that 10 minutes asking ourselves, just like with paper 1, some really key questions. Have I clearly visible paragraphs within my writing? And hopefully if you follow the sentence stem approach, that's going to be really obviously achieved. Have you maintained a tone and register all the way through? If you've started off in an angry way about the weather, have you maintained that all the way through? Have you spelled any words incorrectly? If they look like they might be spelt wrong, change them for words that you are 100% confident in spelling, because that way you're not going to lose any marks or have any spelling errors identified on your paper. Do you need to up-level some vocab? Is some of your vocab boring? Do you need to make it more ambitious and exciting? And have you used at least 6 different types of punctuation? Get some brackets in there, get a semicolon in, make sure you've got an exclamation mark or a question in there as well. Really spend this 10 minutes up-leveling and making sure that what you're sending off to the examiner is fit for purpose and is going to help you to achieve the most marks possible. You can download those questions for editing from the website, mrcrawfordenglish.com/revision. Just follow the link in the video. And feel free to send me some responses that you've done. I'll happily give you some feedback. Email me at info@mrcrawford.co.uk. Give it a go. Use all the resources. You'll be amazing, I'm sure. Laters.